Today with me, Michael Bartolome. Michael, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, good to be here. I am the Chief Commercial Officer at Launch Control. I've been around since the very beginning, basically. And I work with our team and a lot of our clients on engagement strategies. So we're going to talk about some ways to improve what you're saying in the app.
Absolutely, guys. Michael and I have a cool PPT that we're going to be sharing today, but of course we're going to have a Q&A and we're going to do our best to have this as a conversation. It's a two-way street, and we always like to hear especially the latest trends from our user base. So thank you all for joining. And well, Michael, let's kick it off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, guys, go ahead and feel free to drop any questions you want in the chat throughout. We'll probably get to them at the end, but go ahead and drop them in as you think of them. And so I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. The main thing that I want you to kind of get in the mindset of before we get started, though, is to not think of SMS engagement as cold outreach. It's not a call, and hope situation like you would get with cold calling. This is active engagement with homeowners who are holding their phones in front of them. They're looking at your message. You have their captive attention. How do you capitalize on that? How do you push that conversation farther down your lead funnel so you can get to the point of a discovery call, and then from the discovery call, be able to close that business and grow your business? Now, in order to do that, we want to be able to take corrective measures. The biggest mistake that people make is they take that cold outreach approach and everything feels very mechanical and repetitive, and it does not inspire response. Whereas the simple adjustment of simply texting the way you text in your personal life, of being a person to another person, can have really profound effects on the response you get within the system and your ability to, again, set up discovery calls and then close business and grow your business. Okay, so the first thing that you guys want to do, right, before you've sent any messages, before you've even really thought about how you want to approach your messaging, is to think about the data, right? Because data, what's really behind that are individuals, human beings, right? So in any business, you want to be able to talk to select groups of people, right? So on my team, right, or Catherine's team, we know that if we're talking to someone who is at the assistant level at a company and just learning real estate investment, we have to take them down a very different talk track than someone who has been in real estate investment for 5 to 7 years, is closing 50 plus deals a year, and wants to use Launch Control to scale their business more. Those are very different conversations. And we have to know going in who we're going to talk to, because it's going to change the way we craft that conversation, and most importantly, the solutions that we provide. So for you guys, it's no different. You have to know going in, batch by batch, who you're talking to. If you send a message to Dallas Fort Worth for everyone that fit any level of distress filters, you have no idea who you're talking to. The only thing that you know is that they fit a series of distress filters, right? But if you can narrow it down to pre-foreclosure and leads, you know that there's a commonality of money worries, and that commonality of money worries is going to change the way that you approach that conversation, right? It's going to make you very helpful. It's going to make you want to stand out from the crowd by offering solutions instead of enunciating the problem or pointing out the problem, right? So, and then if you can drill down even farther, drill down to a specific housing community, think of the ways that you can segment that audience down to a batch of 50, 100, 150, so that every single one of those responses comes in, is center grouped into that very specific group of people. So whoever is running your system knows that if it's a money worries batch, they have to approach every single one of those responses from that mindset, of this person has money worries, this person has a ticking clock. How can I help them? How can I provide solutions for them in a 60 to 90-day window and stand out from that very high pressure, pushy crowd that is also messaging them in that same time frame? Stand out, be different by knowing who you're talking to. Okay, so I'll pause there for a second. Any questions about that in terms of, for instance, how you would segment data or some data segmentation approaches, or does everybody get the general idea of create a closed group and speak directly to that group?
I have one quick question, Mike.
Sure.
In regards to when you're speaking to data segmentation, are you saying we should specifically text vacant homes, tired landlords, and those should be batches in themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm saying go down even further if you can, right? So if you've got vacants and out of state, or vacants and absentee owner, right? Can you get that down to a specific area of the market that you serve? Can you segment that by, say, for instance, 55 and older versus younger homeowners? Like, what demographics can you break down to get it down really, really small, right? Even if it means that you're sending out a batch of 50 instead of 150, but you know exactly who you're talking to in that batch of 50, the chances of you engaging with them in a real conversation is gonna go up, because you know what problem they need to solve and you have a very clear picture in your mind. I mean, right? So like, let's say that you're talking to, it's out of state landlords, 55 or older. You know, you have this idea in your mind, and you're probably right that what they're looking for is a pretty quick, clean solution. They probably own there's a good chance they even own multiple properties, which is great for you, but they don't want the runaround, right? They just want factual problem solving, and they want to cut to the chase. You know that. So you have this picture in your mind of, 6-year-old guy, owns a couple of properties, doesn't want any BS, and he's looking at your message. How would you interact with him on a discovery call? How would you interact with him on a site visit? Do that via your response instead of canned responses. Picture the guy holding his phone who answered your text and talk to that person. Make sense?
Completely. Thank you so much.
Yep, sure thing. Okay, so let's with that in mind, always we want to be natural, we want to have good conversations, we want to start by dissecting it down to specifically who we're talking to. And Catherine, we can jump into some of the messaging.
Yeah, so I would like to go back to the data piece later for a second. I got a few more to throw in there, but yeah, let's definitely do the message.
Okay, so yeah, remind me when we get to the Q&A. We'll do the Q&A in kind of the order of the presentation, and you can drop a little knowledge on us there as well. All right, guys. So what you see on the screen is Kyle, to answer your question, yes, we're going to send this recording to everyone. So, no need to try to listen to me and read the messages and see what Catherine's doing. Just kind of sit back, relax, absorb as much as you can, and then we'll send you guys the recording afterwards, and you can run through it, pull out whatever you need from it. Okay. Something that happens a lot with our clients is people come in and they want to use different, a single marketing channel or different marketing channels, but they don't have a marketing background, right? Or they don't have a sales background. So as companies start to scale up, people find themselves in a position where they're like, well, I understand real estate investment really well now. I'm closing deals. I'm consistent. I'm doing well. I don't know how to build a sales and marketing funnel. I don't know how to get those systems set up. And it's a really important thing as you're doing your education piece in real estate investment and anywhere along the way, build in that sales and marketing structure, because it will really help you with these engagement flows of just kind of understanding how to move people through a conversion pipeline. And one of the tenets of marketing always is to A/B test. don't never trust your assumptions. Always try a few different things to see what sticks. So if we look at this messaging example, if you do notice at the top, it says prospecting plus out of state plus Oak Ridge Estates, right? So we're going to a local neighborhood and we're using that out of state filter. And so this is cold outreach, right? So we will try one version of the message, and the only, what it says specifically in the message is there's a couple things that I'll point out, and there is no such thing as a magic message, right? You have to try a few different things, but there are little tricks that you can use within those initial messages to get responses. Okay, so the reason I used Oak Ridge Estates, a local neighborhood, is because it makes it feel less like prospecting and more like someone who's looking for a very specific solution in a very specific neighborhood. It feels a lot more personal if you can get down to that level of saying, yeah, it's your neighborhood that I'm interested in. Avoid things like this, right? Like, hey, I passed by your house the other day. I really love that palm tree you've got out front. That's creepy. People don't like that. They don't like the idea of you cruising by their house. But if you're looking for a place in a specific neighborhood and you're having frustration finding something on MLS and you're just looking to kind of expand horizons, that will work better, right? It's the neighborhood you're interested in, not necessarily their specific house. Now, at the end of this message, it says, give me a quick reply, or try any of the opt-in kind of language, like, just reply sure if you want to pick up the conversation, or reply yep if you want to get something scheduled. Because what you're trying to get them to do is just a very simple response, right? Any simple response, even if it's a yes or no question, right? And they're like, yes, no, why? Now they're in the inbox, right? When they're in the inbox, all the tools are unlocked. Right? You can message them directly. You can use the quick replies. You can set reminders. You can put them on drip campaigns if it's the right time to put them on a drip campaign. And really importantly, you have their captive attention. So if the conversation is going well, you have that choice to pivot to a phone call if that's the right thing to do. If it's a hot enough lead, and you can pivot to a phone call. Now, as you try this, like let's say for instance, in your market, you separate your out of states all the way down to 5 different neighborhoods, and you're doing small batches to those 5 different neighborhoods. Are there any markers about that neighborhood that would change the way that you would approach? Right. So it's like one neighborhood, I don't know, it's mostly people that are, like I said, 55 or older. It's an old school neighborhood. It's where grandma lives and where you go on Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. It's that neighborhood. Right. My grandparents lived in this neighborhood that just looked like it was in a time warp. You could just tell it was full of grandmas and grandpas. Right. So is it that neighborhood, or is it, what are there markers about the neighborhood that would change the way that you would approach it, either in what you mention about the neighborhood or the tone of voice you have, knowing whom the recipients are. Okay. So again, think about your data as people. The more you can think of your data as people, the easier it will be to talk to people when you're sending these messages. Okay, Catherine, you want to move to the next example?
Yes.
All right, so let's see. Joe Flores, can you read that line just below example 2?
Template A, you mean?
Yeah, starting with website inbound.
Yep. Website inbound plus didn't answer initial callback.
Thank you. Okay, so doesn't sound like prospecting, right? Because it's not. And this is a huge miss for people using launch control, is they think of it too much as just cold outreach and not enough as a really powerful communication tool for every stage of their business. Okay, so if you guys are, is anybody, to just kind of like a show of hands or like a thumbs up emoji or whatever, is anybody using other marketing channels like direct mail or PPC or some running some Facebook stuff? Okay. So those different marketing channels, they're not active the way texting is. They're passive, right? But those leads, when they come in, are great, right? You send out direct mail pieces, for instance, right? What you don't see ever is the homeowner gets the direct mail piece and goes, and just throws it, right? You don't see the gut reactions. Texting gives you the gut reactions. People respond, who is this? What do you mean? You're just getting a verbalization of I'm going to throw my direct mail piece that I don't want. But when they do want it, when they reply, when they get to the equivalent of an inbox, right? They've raised their hand, they've shown interest. Those leads, which we're often referred to as motivated leads or interested leads, right? Those feel a lot more comfortable because they came to you, right? So when you get those leads, you're not going to close every one of them, but you still have that warm introduction. You still have that connection of them coming to you. So if you can take those leads and then put them back in through launch control and you can retarget them, amazing. Even better is if you can start to use your own website to do this. When you guys registered for launch control, when you gave your EIN number and you went through the 10 DLC hoops, what you did in turn was set yourself up with a really great lead capture mechanism. Every company in the world uses their website as a primary source of lead generation, right? Like I wish I had a list of 10,000 wholesalers that I could go after and market to, but we have to wait for people to come into us. They come into our website, they fill out a form and they acknowledge that SMS is okay. And we have full opt-in with them. And they know who we are. They're expecting our call, right? So closing those leads is a lot easier than if we just pull some names off of LinkedIn and try that. Same thing applies for REI. You set up a really great opt-in mechanism on your website. The more that you can use it and then take those leads and funnel them into launch control to engage, those leads are exponentially easier to close, right? And launch is a great tool to do it, especially with the drip automation function, right? Because if they came to your website and they raise their hand, they might not be ready to sell right this second, but they are looking for alternatives. And if you can educate and problem solve, you will win in the end, right? So really great leads if you can get them. But your approach is going to be different, right? So you can see from these sample messages, something like, thanks for visiting our site. You've got our whole team available on this thread. Any questions, right? So this is the yes, no thing, right? Give them a chance to ask a question. And then setting expectations. We'll give you a call as well. So when you do call, you had already announced that. You'd already told them that it was coming. And then giving them the option to opt out. These are these little tricks of asking yes, no questions or easy response questions, setting expectations of the next thing that you are going to do and giving them the respect and ability to opt out. Everybody's like, no, I don't want to opt out. Yeah, you do. You want people to have the ability to take that choice if they want it, right? Because what you want is captive, active audience, not someone that you bludgeon, right? You want people that want to be communicated with. So I'll repeat those three things because it applies to all of the initial messaging. Ask simple yes, no questions or easy response questions. Set expectations of what the next steps are going to be or what problem you want to solve, and do give them the option to opt out if they want to opt out. Okay. All right. Let's move on to sample 3, and we'll spin through this one really quickly. This goes back to what I was mentioning earlier. You have a direct mail campaign. Let's say that the person came to you. They had it's a direct mail campaign, right? You've spoken to them. When you spoke to them, you have notes in your CRM or in your system that say that they had tried to list the place and it didn't work out. So they came to you looking for solutions outside of MLS. So you know that it's a failed listing situation, right? And procrastinator, you have a note that there may be somebody who just wasn't going to make up their mind or couldn't seem to make up their mind, right? So you want to take this and you want to craft a solution for them, right? Not just, if you just hit this person up who you've already talked to with, hey, how about a cash offer for 57 Green Street? They're going to be like, no, right? You have to come in with something new that helps address failed listing plus procrastinator. So for not everybody's going to be able to do creative financing or subject to, but this is just as an example, bringing in a new angle, teaching them something, that giving them an alternative that they maybe didn't know much about, so that you can be a problem solver for them, right? But the point is that you really want to have that. The point of this whole section is when you do segment your data and you figure out who you want to talk to and you figure out what you want to say to them, you want to be able to do that within a 3 funnel system of prospecting, website inbound, and then retargeting of your other marketing flows. Okay. Catherine, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on this real quick, and something that I want to mention earlier in the beginning of the call. We are all talking about good practices of the data segmentation. Yeah, data segmentation will empower you to craft messages that are more aligned with individual preferences. They're going to leave you space to come across as a local investor. They're gonna leave you space to sound as somebody that knows the area, even if you use local slang. Let's say you're texting Jersey, right? So you're gonna use verbiage that is rather used in Jersey than, let's say, Florida, right? And not only the good practices that we're talking about here should be implemented, but there are risks. And yes, let's say my job here at Launch is usually to be calling out risks and being like, not there, guys, and not quite there. But this is something that I also want to share with my customers, right? If you fail to segment your data, you might run into an issue with your whole account. And I can give you a real life example. So we were talking to one of our multi-account holders, one of our high spenders, obviously, a long life cycle, a high performing customer, somebody that my CSMs have always had a great relationship with. And we noticed that they were running into this issue of running out of data frequently. And we were just curious. It was a multi-account holder. It was a high volume that they had enabled, and we weren't sure why they were burning through the data. So once we checked in with them and we went through the account together, we noticed imports of, let's say, 100,000 contacts within one list. So within those rows, you can imagine how many different, let's say, local areas or sub areas are there, or you can imagine how many different distress factors, right? No criteria whatsoever was used to segment that data. And of course, leads were dropping off. If I know that within this one list for Atlanta, Georgia, I have, let's say the list is 15K, but I have 2K people that I really should be able to retarget as soon as possible, I'm not going to risk losing them into that bunch of contacts, basically, because it's not about how many contacts you have, it's about how many conversations, what Michael here mentions always, practically, how many conversations you have open and active, and did you really gauge their interest? So that's the main thing I wanted to say. Otherwise, you might run into an issue not having clean data and not having clean KPIs of your team, and not really, maybe just losing some important information for your business as well.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. I do want to mention with a lot of this stuff, guys, like I know that this may be the first time you've kind of considered, like, well, what do we do with those website inbound leads? Well, how would we retarget our leads, or even follow up to some of those like 3-point structure that I mentioned for messages? Catherine's our director of customer experience. Her team is incredible. For any of this, for follow-up, go to them and we'll help you guys with some idea generation, brainstorm with you. And if there's anything that we need to do, deeper sessions on, then, they can highlight those, and we'll come back, schedule a mastermind, and make sure that we answer any in-depth questions as in-depth as possible.
Definitely. And I'm just sharing some information here in the chat box. Guys, the new type of, well, let's say a live session we have with customers is the live batch send. So you're able to sit with your CSM and to go through those, especially if you're, let's say, a beginner user, somebody that just signed up. You're maybe not a beginner investor, but the platform might be new to you. These guys are practically going to guide you through the batch send. They're going to give you the ABC and the technical functionality, plus they will share the strategy, and they will be there with you each step of the road. There are follow-up live batch sends as well. Basically, throughout the whole first month of your engagement with launch, you're now able to work with our team closely and make sure you have everything dialed in. So thank you, Michael, for
Awesome.
mentioning
Yeah,
that option.
I wasn't planning to plug the live batch sends, but that's a great point. You guys should definitely take advantage of that. It's a really accelerated way to learn a lot of these engagement best practices. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to mention a couple of things here. It's people say to me or to us often, well, I don't know what to say. Right? And I understand that when you're looking at a blank screen and the cursor's blinking at you, it's hard to figure out what to say. Right. But there are a couple of easy things that you can do. And the first step is to really just think about how you handle your discovery calls. Right? Because what I see a lot of in real estate investment, and honestly other industries as well, but primarily in real estate investment, is the marketing side of things, especially when it comes to that early stage marketing. It's very rote messaging, very, not a lot of natural conversation. There's none of the charm and intellect and solution-based conversations that you have with people on the phone gets put into those first few stages of the pipeline. And it should, because it shouldn't be a light switch. It shouldn't be like, hey, you want a cash offer for your house? How about now? How about now? And then you get on the phone and you're all charm, all solutions, really connecting with the homeowner, building trust. You want to know what to say? Look at what you already say. Look at what makes you a great investor and deconstruct that, right? Because you have two endpoints that you want to get to as an investor, right? Two problems that you want to solve as an investor, which is, one, what does the homeowner need to solve? What problem do they need to solve so I can solve that for them, right? And then the other is, what is my buyer looking for right now? What's their problem? Do they need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath place? Do they need, what are they looking for specifically, so that you can problem solve with homeowners and then quickly problem solve with buyers and increase your volume, right? So if you're looking at discovery call, where you're great at building trust and getting motivation and finding out, going through alternatives and getting some discovery details about the house, how can you take some of that approach and apply it to the first messages in your funnel? Because that's what text is, right? As soon as that person answers your text message is touch point number one. As soon as they answer, it is now a live opportunity. They're holding their phone in their hand. They're looking at it. They're waiting for your response. You have their captive attention. It is a live opportunity, just like a discovery call is a live opportunity. So how do you take some of that charm, problem solving, investor intellect, and put it into the earlier stages of your pipeline? I think you'll find that it's a lot easier to figure out what to say in those initial messages and early stages of the inbox. And then another little plug we are currently working on and testing an AI content generator for you guys. So you'll be able to just select 2 or 3 variables and it will churn out full templates for you. Now, I want to put some caution here is that any AI messaging, because I was playing around with it today, just in ChatGPT, and they require some editing, right? AI doesn't have your personality. AI doesn't have your particular solutions outlined. What it'll do is get you 80% of the way there. So you don't have the blank cursor, blank or blinking cursor, blank screen problem. But you're still going to need to do this deconstructing of your discovery call, your sales conversion approaches, and finding out where you and looking at where you can place that again in those early stage messages. Any questions about that?
Guys, feel free to raise hands or drop questions in the chat box. Tracking.
All right, we can keep going through
Sure
here.
thing. All right, Michael, let's talk about threads and retargeting a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that I'll be honest, this one absolutely drives me crazy. Because everybody uses SMS in their personal lives, or even Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or any of the chat-based tools. And you can see in all of those, it's natural conversations, it's clipped language. You're often starting with a verb or starting with something like in the section below where it says a little more info. There are natural patterns. You can just look at your own messaging to see the way that you normally speak in a text and figure out how to apply that to what you're doing. But what Catherine and I will see often is somebody sends a message that says something like, you own 57 Green Street, is that correct? I might be able to give you a great deal for it. Let's talk. And then 30 days later, they send the exact same message, literally the exact same message, like did not have a template lined up for that 30-day retarget. Instead, they just copy and pasted the old message. And so what they get is just the same message repeated twice. Like, anybody think that's going to work? Anybody think there's a good chance that somebody's going to be like, oh yeah, I didn't respond to that exact same message last time I got it. This feels like a person. I'll respond now. You're shooting yourself in the foot, right? So you want to think again that this always imagine any response in your inbox. Imagine a person. Hopefully you know your data well, so you can imagine what that person looks like, holding their phone in their hand, right? So when they get that 30-day message, it should be an extension of the message you already sent, because launch is going to put it into a thread. It's going to be the same number it's going to be the same sender. So what they're going to see is something like this, right? So and this is a response to a website form, right? Thanks for visiting our site, blah, blah, blah. Next message, ask them a question, right? Simple reply question. What brought you to our site? Curious about a specific solution, right? So it's an extension of, right? You're trying to get more information. You're taking a different angle. It's an extension of the message that preceded it. So, what we did, we broke these down. You guys, I'm going to skip past it. You guys can go back and review if you want to see some, the approaches that we took. But it's a very simple concept of send the initial message, and then from that initial message, what additional guidance can you offer? How can you problem solve? But how can you do it in a way that feels like someone sending a second text message? Not marketing, not copy and paste, but a logical extension of that first message. Because you don't have to match it message per message, right? So like anybody that replied to that website opt-in form can get that second message. It says, what brought you to us, by the way, and then the rest of it, right? That applies to everyone that filled out that website opt-in form, but it's it's a lot more personal, and it's a clear extension of the initial message. So really keep that in mind. Think in threads always, not just with the 30-day retargeting, but anything in the inbox, anything in drip campaigns, always think in threads, because once you've started that conversation, all the way down the line, that's what they're going to see. It's like reading lines in a story. And if your story is very repetitive, or your story is nonsensical or out of order, it's going to be a clear marker that you're throwing a net instead of having a conversation.
Thank you,
Okay,
Michael.
so Catherine, this is your territory. You tap me in if you need my help.
Totally. Thank you, Michael, for expanding on this. And guys, all the tips that you heard from Michael today are everything that any success manager within launch control would tell you to do. So now we're going to go over some don'ts. And these don'ts, I think it's great that I can show you these examples, because with these examples, then you can see those. I think plenty of you will be able to recognize very common situations that you or your VA see in their inbox, right? So I'll probably call someone out just to ask a pretty simple question, but let me see, who can I work with here? Rigo, can you speak for chance? Okay, Rigo's not there. Let's say Marta. How about you?
Yes.
Hi, Marta. So from this conversation that you and I are taking a look right now, a look at right now, just tell me, what would you rather do first? If somebody just said no thanks, which was obviously August 14th here, so this person was not open to sell their property on August 14th. And we see an example of us saying thank you of one of our users. Then we have, do you have another property or know anyone who would like to sell? So this is a very common quick reply. It's fine to say this, to do some more post discovery questions, or just try to keep the conversation active and engage further with somebody, right? But when they offered this last reply, Marta, what would be your first instinct? What would you go with? Would you try to get them on the phone? Would you reply rather than ghosting them? So what would be your first step?
I would ask her if she can take decisions on the property, or do I have to contact the parents? We need to get it going to see if we can, get it and upload it so that we can work that deal.
Got
Because
it. So-
obviously, if she
Yeah.
gave me that information, is because the parents obviously are looking for, to sell the property.
Exactly. And this is a lead dropped. Thank you so much, Marta. So first, as Marta said, I wouldn't drop the convo to start with. And it's okay. Combos get missed. There's a lot of volume being texted out, but really tracking these opportunities and mining these opportunities is the lead generation and deal flow for you. So using tags, knows homeowner, even that. If this is not my prospect, if this is not the lead that I'm going to close a deal with, I would use a custom tag in launch control and somehow mark them so that those tags can also get pulled to my CRM once I'm ready to push to CRM. Before that, I would verify the phone number, right? And then I will be able to either, as Marta said, ask some more questions through texting, or if they're more of a talker, get them on the phone as soon as possible, lead the conversation from there. As Michael said, it's really about your investor's charm, and there's no way that you're not going to know what to say in text if you know what to say when you talk to them. And well, this is a room full of investors. Another
Catherine,
very yes,
I am sorry to interrupt. Can I add one more point to that?
sure.
So a common response to saying don't drop a conversation here would be like, well, we called them. It was a call situation, right? But people aren't always going to pick up, or we push to CRM. Well, that's not always going to be, you're not always going to be able to connect with them past that point, right? So you want to keep this open, especially for the drip campaign function. So you can pick that conversation back up exactly where you left it. If you ghost it, then you're not going to be able to naturally do that. Whereas if you close out the conversation here, and then you add them back to a drip after you've been unable to connect with them, then it keeps the power of this thread open, right? It keeps the potential of this thread open, and you're not basically starting from scratch. And all it takes is one bridge message to be able to keep that thread open and that opportunity open.
Thanks, Michael. 100%. And well, these are some good examples, right? So not pushing to CRM quickly, and in our LCSS, this is our lead conversion strategy session, we advise to change the strategy. So basically, we advise our customer to change the strategy of not really insisting on transitioning the lead from launch control towards their CRM too quick. Rather than that, we created a tag. Once again, going back to the custom tagging function, it's magic when you really connect that to your CRM. So create a tag call or new lead and export the list to the cold callers, right? Or this will allow for a proper lead handoff, right? For easier follow-up, as Michael mentioned, you can go backwards. So you can talk to them, you can leave the notes within launch control. Once you leave the notes, your cold caller is going to see those notes in your CRM. In case the call didn't bring them closer to a closer, you're going to bring it back to SMS for retargeting, right? So always leave an open space for you to operate in multiple channels. This is also important. Whatever is a dead end in some other marketing channel that you might be using, there's always an opportunity to be targeting that lead further through SMS engagement. Also, SMS is not always going to be enough. Most leads are going to want to talk to you. So in multiple conversations we have with our customers, they refrain to using just one single marketing channel. Or I'm going cold calling, I'm not going to be texting anymore. Why not do both? That's my forever question, because it's really most likely that I'm going to get in touch with multiple prospects, different homeowners, different seniority, and they're going to prefer different channels of communication. Why not generate leads out of all of those, right? Also, Russian conversations. This is important to touch on. One of our pro users, obviously high tier user, one VA at launch control plus cold callers that are basically waiting for the lead intake as soon as it's pushed to their CRM. So their protocol was to hand off the lead as soon as it shows interest to the cold caller so that they can work on the further conversation. What happens, and these are human errors, they can happen in any team structure. The VA didn't follow the protocol, maybe once, maybe more than once. The prospect was in chat for too long. It wasn't pushed over to the CRM. The conversation was rushed. And well, we see the initial message example, right? So talking about this, definitely don't rush and don't let any of your prospects meet a dead end, no matter within which communication channel you're speaking to them with. You always need to be able to pivot, to reverse engineer the conversation and pick it up from the point where you stopped. As Michael mentioned, very important to keep a sequence and not have your initial message and your follow-up after 30 days sound like the exactly same thing, because very likely the same guy is going to be reading that, right? So before we go on, I would ask Michael if he would have anything to expand to this.
Yeah, just a bit. In real estate investment, obviously everybody wants to get the deal that closes quickly, right? You've got someone, they are ready to sell in this window, and you are able to close in this window. But the truth is, most of your deals are a matter of timing, right? There are people that are in that exploratory phase where they're just trying to figure out their options, or they don't feel that they're yet at the point where they need to go down a wholesaling route. They're still looking for potential to go MLS, or maybe they're talking to realtors to see if there's any space there, and they're not quite there on a timing level, right? So just because you have the active attention of the homeowner in that moment via text doesn't mean that you have to close it in that moment. What you're doing is creating a relationship, and you're creating a connection with a lead. So you want to be able, and some of this is intuition, but you want to be able to look at that conversation and know when it's time to back off, but to keep the thread open. So again, always thinking in threads, right? And the team can walk you through how to use the reminder notifications to add detail and to follow up with specifics at the right time. But it's knowing when to push and knowing when to let them breathe, so that you can be that solution-based provider, or the person that provides the solutions they need to get to where they need to be. Sometimes that comes from knowing when to give them a little room to breathe, but again, keeping that very, very important thread open and able to return to.
Thanks, Michael. So before we move on, anybody, any questions? Feel free to text them to us. Just leave them in the chat box, or any hands raised currently.
Hey, Catherine, I have a question.
Yes, Paul, listening.
Yes, so I'm trying to figure out the retargeting, because that's the problem I'm trying to find a solution for. So yes, I have leads coming through my website and other forums. I do want to put them into launch control. My understanding is that everything that goes into launch control has to be in a CSV file uploaded. Is that how we do it, or is there a way to just do one-offs, like adding contacts to the system?
Unfortunately, Paul, we can't be adding contacts on a contact level. So yes, it needs to go through the import. The sample file that you can use for the import can be downloaded within your import menu. So I'm afraid you would need to populate at least the most of that data for the import to go through. In case you want to import a small amount of prospects, not a problem, but still needs to be mapped and go through an XLSX or a CSV file. Basically, just contact level, not a part of the functionality for, well, compliance reasons on top of
Okay.
others.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. I think we're ready to move on to drip sequences and examples of drips. Okay, so guys, this is more of a joke slide, but still, don't continue pinging obvious opt-outs before we move on to drips. As you see, the reply wasn't anything other than a DNC, right? So these happen. Sometimes the VA is just going to be in the training process. So a message or two like this might slip. I wouldn't be too concerned about a message or two, but definitely make sure that conversations like this are marked as DNC. Don't allow yourself any follow-up. Eventually, it's going to be more expensive than any deal you can close, right?
Yeah,
So-
I mean, guys, they can go back to that just for 1 second, Catherine. So there's a couple things that are at play here. One, again, every recipient is a human being. Treat them as such, right? So if they are showing a clear and negative disinterest in what you're offering, just DNC them, right? Put them on the do not call list. The other thing is that this is the exact kind of thing that gets messages reported to the carriers. If messages get reported to the carriers because of this kind of behavior, then your account gets red flagged. If your campaign with the carriers gets too many of these, you run the risk of getting shut down. So it can have very adverse effects on your maintainability with SMS. It's just they take the easy route and don't push. Again, with multiple marketing funnels, it doesn't mean that you can't send this person a direct mail piece. It doesn't mean that if you've especially if you've got them in through your website, you can't retarget them on social. There are different ways that you can get to them, but if they've clearly shown disinterest in text, respect that.
100%. Get you more deals for sure. So let's dive into drips. Drip automations, the main part of our follow-up strategy, as I'm pretty sure everybody here knows, one of our main functionalities. So talking about drips as strategic touch points and just the sequence of messages that should go out through drips, it's going to vary depending on the case. It's going to vary depending on the type of conversation you have. Some leads you need to continue talking to within the next 2 days. There's an urgency factor. There's some other reason that you might want to retarget them earlier and try to re-engage into that inbox conversation. However, once they land in your inbox, you really want to decide on your strategic approach so that it makes the most sense on a prospect level. Even utilize tags to organize your messaging. As we mentioned earlier, establishing a healthy number of touch points, I would say less than 3 or 4 touch points within a drip sequence are a waste of its functionality, right? Why reduce it to a single touch point or 2 if you can expand that sequence so that it makes sense and guarantee that you have contact with that homeowner in particular, whether they're currently interested or not, in the long run. Even extend it for up to a year, because you're going to be there. They're probably going to get text blasted by multiple other investors, and they're probably going to be texting them once, maybe try some bad retargeting. We've seen plenty of bad examples, but if you want to stand out in the quality of response in that personalized approach that you take, much more likely that a John Doe is going to be open to communicating with you rather than a guy that texted them 5 times this month with the exactly same message. Maybe tried 15 times, but 10 of those got bounced. That's also very likely. So try to keep those messages such so that they make sense and that the sequence is basically depending on the case. Sometimes it's a warm lead. It happens. It's a work week. You get too busy. Even half of this room, I guess, don't always reply to their text, or they're just busy. They're going to forget that for a couple of hours, might remember tomorrow. Why not follow up on day 1? On the other hand, if somebody says no thanks or no plans currently, why not? No problem. We're going to be delivering the recording. Sorry. Why not extend that into touch points of 30, 60, 90, 120 days? Yes, Michael?
Oh, no, just wrap when you're finished. I have another
Okay,
little
for
thing.
sure. Sorry, guys, juggling a lot of screens right now. Trying to moderate this and speak. Creating a win-over strategy. If they ghosted you, something might have gone wrong in that conversation. You got to see what triggered them to abandon the conversation and not repeat the same thing, right? So take a look at this. I have several. What house and what kind of deal? Would you like to discuss this on a call? Let me know your availability. They have multiple properties. For me, this might have been a little bit of, let's say, too much of a rush. I would rather ask a few more questions through text, but definitely want to get this person on a call because they have multiple properties to talk about. So you want to gauge that interest. On the other hand, there was a lot of follow-up here. As we saw this message reply, and there was some aggressive, inadequate timing, excessive touch points, basically drip gone wrong. Guys, never do this. Even if you notice an automation going wrong in your inbox, unmark the drip, stop the automation, make sure you restart that conversation in a different manner. Here as well, DNC transition was needed. They replied opting out. Instead of a DNC, they ended up on a drip. This is probably the most critical case that can happen, but definitely something you don't want to happen to you. Not only it's a legal liability, but it's probably not going to bring you to a deal either. So rather commit to those pretty conversations, as we mentioned, or conversations that are a promise of a relationship to keep. It's a two-way street. If you focus on those conversations, trust me, it's much more of those in your inbox than DNCs. That's as far as I wanted to say about general drips and the sequence of messages, the length of them and how that should play out, but also pivoting and making some changes. Before setting up any prospect on a drip, you got to verify their phone number. Very important not to be aggressive, very important to listen to the tone of the conversation and to adjust to it. And of course, don't leave something on a drip if it's already a warm lead, right? So recognize that next stage, recognize when it's time for you to transition them over to a phone call and raise interest, actually. Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, so guys, think about this as any conversation that you have is a through line, start to finish. There are no breaks in this conversation. So go back to everything that we've been talking about today, right? Know your data, and by knowing your data, know specifically who you are talking to and what problems you're trying to solve. Then within that conversation structure, think in threads. Don't send them very repetitive messaging. So let's take and then think about how that connects to drip automations, because again, it's a through line, a single conversation with no breaks. Right. So if you download data and you know that it's pre-foreclosure in a specific neighborhood, probably a 60-90 day window, right? And so wherever you exited that conversation in the inbox, that's where you want to pick it up in the drip. It should be a thread. It should be a natural extension of that, or as close as that you can get to that as possible. Now, if you know that they're going into a pre-foreclosure situation, it's a 60-90 day window, you can be a little faster in your pacing, because you know that they need to make a decision by a certain time frame without being aggressive, right? It can be solutions-based, help-based, and not repetitive, offering the same thing over and over based, right? If it's somebody that is 55 or older, high equity, and in a higher end neighborhood it's pretty much at the top of your buy box, right? There is no point in sending them a high frequency drip automation. It's a matter of timing, and you know that, right? Like, you're going to have to spend some time convincing this homeowner that you can offer them a solution that, when compared apples to oranges with what they get going the traditional route and factoring all of the fees and commission and everything else, that it's more or less going to come out in the wash, and it's just going to be easier your way. It's going to take you a bit to convince them of that. You're going to need to get their captive attention, right? So you have to think about who you're talking to through your data, and think about the thread that you've already had, so that the drip is a continuation of that thread and of that solution-based conversation that you are attempting to have with that individual.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Michael, would you like to expand real quick on the discovery calls, the importance of that as a KPI, and why we want to track that rather than some other common KPIs?
Yeah, happily. So a lot of what we talked about today is respecting the recipient, right? And having a natural conversation with the recipient. And with the idea that the end result of that is growth of your business, right? The more of these natural conversations can lead into real interaction with the homeowner, the better chance you have of closing out those deals, the better chance you have of adding consistency and scalability to your business. But how do you measure that, right? Because that approach, that natural conversations-based approach, has nothing to do with messages out, deals in. It's my least favorite stat. How many? Because it's a BS stat. It's not realistic. Of like, well, how many messages do you need to send to get a deal? One. You need to send one message to get a deal. Because if you make a connection with the homeowner and you're able to get to the point of discovery call, and you're able to close that out, it took one message, right? There is no direct equation to messages out, deals in. But the only direct trackable number that you can look at is discovery calls. Because if you can use natural conversation to build up to the point of discovery call, has nothing, it's not about texting anymore. It's about sales processes, right? So as an organization, well, as an individual entrepreneur or as someone building up a team, if you can get 10 discovery calls out of launch control in October, you can track exactly how many of those you closed. You will know your close percentage, right? So now you have two things that you want to improve. Can I get more discovery calls? And can I increase or improve my close percentage? Your close percentage is going to peak at some point, right? Like you're going to be able to convert a certain percentage of those leads. You're on top of your game. You're just crushing it. That's going to peak at some point because that's just the nature of the business. But number of discovery calls does not have to peak, right? If you've got leads coming in from web form, you're retargeting and you're doing some prospecting, you can start to grow that discovery call total month after month. So if you can get to 15 the next month, 20, 25, 30, 50, you can add an actual number to your growth structure, right? Because every new discovery call you close is somewhere between 15 to 20K in your pocket, right? So you can chart the growth of your company by charting the stacking up and then conversion of discovery calls. So really, I would use this as an opportunity to challenge yourself if you're a solo entrepreneur, and challenge your team if you're running a team, to use natural conversation as a bridge to discovery calls as a bridge to business growth.
Much, Michael. Guys, let me leave some space. Michael, I think we're good for a couple of minutes overtime. If anybody has any extra questions or you got to jump, just let me know. Okay, so Q&A may begin now. Feel free to use the inbox or just speak up, unmute your mic.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your voices. Unmute.
Quick
Give us a
question.
shout.
Yes, Devondre, listening.
In regards to the drip campaign, best practice, right? So the way I'm going about it is I'm having my VA, as soon as the seller's like, no, I'm not interested, no, not looking to sell. If it's somewhat of a soft no, I just throw them into a drip, right? It's a text message going out tomorrow saying, okay, no worries. If anything changes, let us know. Then it goes 30, 60, 90. You mentioned something about a year. Should I push that out even further, or is 2-3 months decent?
2-3 months, yes, to answer your question, is decent. If you can push it out further, I would say yes, why not? Because it's going to stop. So the drip is going to get interrupted in case you get traction within that second or third touch point. Only in case the traction doesn't happen is it going to get extended. So basically, if you didn't do it, let's try with that kind of an example, then you would probably need to have your VA go in and manually re-drip each and every prospect after 2 or 3 months whose drips have expired maybe and they didn't engage with you again. So just leave the sequence at least. But Devondre, please, and to anybody in this call, I've seen this situation and this kind of a lead waste more than once. Make sure that you do a kind of a revision of your drips. So just filter by different types of drips that you set up and see if there's some conversations there that might need a manual touch, some conversations that might need repurposing. Maybe some of that stuff is, let's say, outdated, or it just needs a little bit of an extra push or a tweak in the right direction. So you would be surprised how much auditing your inbox on at least a monthly basis is going to get you in terms of lead generation. We do that all the time through our success team. They get on a call with somebody and they audit the account, they pull out the left behind leads, and all of a sudden somebody that was not happy with their lead gen has 15 new warm or hot leads that weren't there before, right? Devondra, hope that answers your question. We got another one from Avi. Avi, I'm listening.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. So I've been getting a lot of what's your offer, or it has to beat this. So just like people giving me their number, and I'm
Michael,
kind of flabbergasted. I don't know exactly how to handle it. And
very,
also
very
people just
common.
saying not willing to jump on the phone. Like, can we jump on? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I need to fill in a few blanks. Can we jump on a quick call? And they'll just say no.
I will, Avi, thank you for asking this question. Michael, I know you will need to jump in a couple of minutes, but only if you have time for this one more, and then we can call it a day, basically. How to respond to those guys that want an offer immediately.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. If you think of it from a recipient standpoint, if they're saying that, they're talking to other people, right? Like this means that they've gotten to the point that they know what wholesaling is, and they are probably getting quite a few people pinging them, and they're like, all right, yeah, look, I'm going to sort things out. I want 200K, right? And no, I don't want to jump on a call because everyone's asking me that. So if you go into from that situation, they're getting hit by a lot of people. Everybody wants to get on a call. What else can I offer them? So, and I think personally, the way that I would handle it is I would be very honest with them. And I would say, I'm this off the top of my head, but I would say something along the lines of, look, I understand that you may be talking to a couple of people about this, trying to sort through your options. Look, I can't give you an accurate offer until I know more about the house, more about your why you're looking to move on. Because my end goal here is to get you to where you need to be. That's it. But I can't do that unless I have some more info. Right. And it's if you're basically letting them know however you would phrase that to say, look, I can't solve for you. I can't get you what you need unless I know a little bit more. We don't have to do it over a phone call. We can, we can do it right here via text if that's what makes you comfortable. You're not going to text all this, but it's this concept, right? Of look, everybody wants to hop on a call. That's the only solution anybody has offered. Hey, let's get on a quick call. Just give me 10 minutes. I'll solve everything in your life for you. Just give me 5 minutes, right? They don't want to hear that again. So what can you offer them that says, look, I want to get you where you need to be, but I need to be able to connect with you, right? I need to be able to find out what is going to make this a solution for you, right? So take this 160 character version of that and give them a new solution.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Avi. Great question. And guys, we're going to be calling it a day. However, this was a lovely conversation. As usual, we're going to see you next month. We're going to be sending out this recording. And if you want to talk more on the follow-up strategy, drips, re-engagement campaigns, how to optimize your account, reach out to the success team of Launch Control. There's always going to be somebody hands-on with you and your team, extra training, extra latest fashion tips from our super users. So feel free to reach out and talk to us. Michael Bartolome, ladies and gentlemen, our CCO, the content master of Launch Control. Thank you so much, Michael, for making the time to join this event. And thank you, everybody, for being our audience. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.